The P-51 comes in at 50 feet, low enough to see the faces of the Japanese mechanics scrambling. When Captain William Shomo realizes he's alone over an enemy airfield packed with planes. The mission was supposed to be reconnaissance. Take pictures. Get out. But someone forgot to tell the 96 Japanese aircraft parked wingtip to wingtip on Apari's coral runway. His finger finds the trigger. In 8 minutes, either he'll be dead or they will be. William Arthur Shomo wasn't supposed to be a killer. Before the war, he'd spent his days at the Pittsburgh School of Embalming, learning to prepare the dead with dignity. Clean suits, folded hands, peaceful expressions. Now he flies a Mustang nicknamed Snooks 5, with 6 .50 caliber machine guns that turn living men into hamburger. He's 26 years old in January 1945. Captain, squadron commander of the 82nd Tactical Reconnaissance Squadron. Born in Jeannette, Pennsylvania, to a family that survived the Johnstown flood. He joined up in August 1941, 4 months before Pearl Harbor, trading the morgue for the cockpit. His buddies call him the Natural, because he flies like breathing comes to most people, without thinking about it. For 3 years and nearly 200 missions, Shomo has photographed jungles, counted ships, mapped enemy positions from New Guinea to Morotai to the Philippines. He's flown obsolete P-39 Airacobras that handled beautifully but lacked the range to find trouble. Then P-40s, always carrying cameras instead of extra ammunition, always staying out of the fight. He's seen exactly 1 Japanese plane in combat. Yesterday, January 10th, 1945. A Val bomber wobbling in for a landing near the Philippines. Shomo put a burst into it and watched it cartwheel into the palms. His first kill after 3 years of war. The other pilots in his squadron rib him about it. Undertaker finally got some work. They don't know he carries it different than they do. He's seen too many bodies laid out peaceful, hands folded, to forget what his guns actually do. His F-6D, a photo reconnaissance P-51 Mustang, sits on the Mindoro Strip this morning, painted olive drab with invasion stripes. Camera ports behind the cockpit. But also those 6 Brownings in the wings, 3 per side, with 1,880 rounds total. The armament is for self-defense. That's what the manual says. Lieutenant Paul Lipscomb will fly his wing today. Good pilot. Steady. They're heading north to photograph the Japanese airfields at Tuguegarao, Apari, and Lawag. MacArthur needs the intelligence for the Lingayen Gulf landings. Routine mission. Snap pictures. Don't engage unless you have to. Shomo checks his oxygen mask, his gun switches, his film canisters. The morning of January 11th, 1945 is clear. Too clear. The kind of visibility that helps you see the enemy, but also helps them see you. He fires up the Packard Merlin engine. The sound fills his chest cavity. 1,200 horsepower of American engineering. They take off heading north at 8:30 hours. Below them, the Philippine jungle scrolls past like crumpled green paper. Shomo maintains 15,000 feet, high enough to spot trouble, low enough to drop fast if they need to run. The cameras are loaded. The mission is simple. At 09:15, everything changes. Lipscomb's voice crackles in the headset. Skipper, 11 o'clock low, gaggle of planes. Shomo looks left and down. His stomach tightens. A lone Betty bomber escorted by 13 fighters, Tonys and a Tojo, flying south at 2,000 feet. The formation is sloppy. Pilots who've learned to survive by avoiding combat. They haven't seen the 2 Mustangs above them. The smart play is to photograph them and radio their position. Shomo is outnumbered 13-2. His mission is reconnaissance, not combat. He's been told this 100 times. His thumb flips the gun switches to armed. We're going in, he says. Lipscomb doesn't hesitate. On your wing. Shomo rolls inverted and pulls. The Mustang drops like a hawk spotting rabbits. Blood pounds in his temples from the negative Gs. He's pulling an Immelman turn, up and over, converting altitude to speed and position. And suddenly, he's behind the Japanese formation with all the advantage. The lead Tony never knows what hits it. Shomo's first burst, maybe 2 seconds, rips into the fighter's engine cowling. Pieces fly. White smoke turns black. The plane corkscrews left trailing flame and goes in. The formation scatters like kicked ants. Shomo pulls left and climbs. The second Tony tries to follow, but Shomo's already above him, dropping down with a speed advantage. Another burst. The canopy shatters. The plane snaps over and spins, pilot either dead or unconscious. It smashes into a rice paddy below. His hands are steady, his breathing even. This is what 3 years of training for 1 minute looks like. The enemy fighters are trying to form up for a counterattack. Shomo doesn't give them time. He rolls right, comes in from the opposite side of the formation. They're looking left for him. He's coming from the right, and catches a third Tony broadside. The fighter explodes midair. Shomo flies through the debris cloud. Something pings off his windscreen. The Betty bomber is trying to run, diving for the deck. Shomo follows it down, the Merlin engine screaming. He pulls up under the bomber's belly, the blind spot, and fires a long burst into the undercarriage. Fuel tanks rupture. The Betty's entire midsection lights up like thermite. It plows into the jungle and detonates. The shockwave buffets his wings. 4 down, under 90 seconds. He pulls up hard and the G-forces crush him into his seat. Gray edges creep into his vision. He relaxes the stick fractionally and the blood returns to his brain. A fifth Tony makes the mistake of attacking head-on. They're both firing, converging at a combined closing speed of maybe 600 miles per hour. Shomo's aim is better. The enemy pilot's isn't. Tracers flash past Shomo's canopy close enough to smell the phosphorus. Then the Tony is spinning past him, trailing smoke, control surfaces shot away. He spots the lead Tony from the original formation, trying to gain altitude. Shomo dives on him from above. Always attack from the sun, always keep the speed advantage, and puts a 3-second burst into the fuselage. The fighter shudders, stalls, and drops. 6th kill. 2 more Tonys are running low and fast, hugging the terrain. Shomo drops to 300 feet, low enough to see individual trees, and pulls maximum boost. The Merlin is redlining, but she holds together. He catches the first Tony, and his opening burst is perfect. Center mass. The fighter explodes so close that Shomo has to jink right to avoid the fireball. He's breathing hard now, his flight suit soaked with sweat. The fuel gauge says he's burned through a third of his tanks in combat maneuvering. Time to go home. Then Lipscomb's voice. Got 3. 3 confirmed. The math hits Shomo between the eyes. He just shot down 7 Japanese planes in 6 minutes. His wingman got 3 more. 10 of 13 enemy aircraft destroyed. The 3 survivors have vanished into a cloud bank at maximum speed. 7 kills in 1 engagement. The American record for a single mission is 9, set by Navy Commander David McCampbell 3 months ago off Leyte Gulf. Shomo keys his radio. Lipscomb, you seeing what I'm seeing? If you're seeing a whole lot of empty sky where Japanese planes used to be, yeah. They form up and head south. Shomo's hands are shaking now, adrenaline dump hitting delayed. He runs through his combat report in his head, trying to remember the sequence. First Tony, second Tony, third from the side, the Betty, head-on engagement, lead fighter, low pursuit. 7, in 6 minutes. Starting from a reconnaissance mission, they land at Mindoro at 11:45 hours with fuel gauges showing red. The ground crew is already gathering. Word travels fast on military airstrips when 2 planes take off and come back full of bullet holes and empty ammunition bays. Shomo climbs out of the cockpit on legs that don't want to hold him. His crew chief, Sergeant Morrison, is counting holes in the wings. Skipper, you got stitched pretty good. Couple rounds punched through the starboard wing root. Shomo doesn't remember taking fire. It happened so fast, the whole thing maybe lasted the time it takes to smoke 2 cigarettes. But his plane shows the truth. Shell holes, hydraulic fluid staining the undercarriage, a crease in the canopy frame that came close, too close. The intelligence officer arrives with his clipboard. "Captain Shomo, I need your after-action report." 7 confirmed, Shomo says. His voice sounds strange to his own ears, flat and mechanical. 3 Tonys in the initial pass. Betty bomber. 2 more Tonys head-on and from above. Final Tony at low altitude. The intel officer stops writing. 7? You mean total between you and Lieutenant Lipscomb? No. 7 for me. Lipscomb got 3 more. Word spreads like aviation fuel fumes. Within an hour, half the base knows. Someone asks Shomo if he's sure, really sure, about the count. He describes each engagement in sequence, where the planes fell, what they were doing when he hit them. Lipscomb corroborates every detail. Traditional protocol on fighter bases. You do a victory roll, barrel roll, for each confirmed kill when you land. Shomo forgot. Now he's on the ground. But someone suggests he go back up and do it properly. He takes Snooks 5 back up 30 minutes later. The ground crews and officers gather to watch. First roll, clean and crisp. Second roll, third roll. By the 4th roll, the base operations officer has come outside. By the 5th, colonels are emerging from headquarters. 6th roll, 7th roll. Shomo brings it in and shuts down. His crew chief is grinning like a kid at Christmas. "Skipper, you know what you just did. You made ace in a single mission." Not just ace. Ace plus 2. The only American fighter pilot to accomplish that in a P-51. Only Navy Commander McCampbell ever scored more in one engagement, and he needed a full carrier task force below him running combat air patrol. General George Kenney himself sends a radio message that afternoon. Recommend immediate award of Medal of Honor for Captain William A. Shomo for extraordinary gallantry in aerial combat. But Shomo is thinking about the 3 Japanese pilots who got away. They're flying home right now to Apari or wherever they're based, and they'll file a report about losing 10 aircraft to 2 American fighters in under 10 minutes. Maybe command won't believe them. Maybe they'll think the pilots panicked, exaggerated the threat. Or maybe, and this thought settles cold in Shomo's gut, maybe Japanese intelligence will realize that American fighters are getting better. Pilots are getting better. The war is turning faster than anyone expected. That night, Shomo writes letters home but doesn't mention the mission. What would he say? "Dear Mom, today I killed 7 men before lunch. The Undertaker became the undertaking." He tears that letter up and writes another one about the weather and how much he misses Pennsylvania. Sleep doesn't come easy. Every time he closes his eyes, he sees that first Tony exploding. The Betty coming apart in midair. 7 planes, 7 pilots. Some of them burned. Some of them hit the ground at 400 miles per hour. He's prepared plenty of bodies in his old life, but he never created them. The medic offers him a bottle of medicinal whiskey. Shomo waves it off. General MacArthur himself pinned the Medal of Honor on Shomo's chest on April 1, 1945. The citation reads, "For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty." It doesn't mention that Shomo violated his mission parameters by engaging. It doesn't mention the odds. It doesn't need to. The mission reveals something fundamental about the air war in early 1945. Japanese pilot quality had collapsed. The veterans, men who'd flown at Pearl Harbor, Coral Sea, Midway, were mostly dead. What remained were hastily trained replacements flying obsolete aircraft with dwindling fuel. They scattered when hit because they'd learned that standing and fighting meant dying. American pilots, meanwhile, were better trained, better equipped, and increasingly aggressive. Shomo represented this evolution perfectly. 3 years of preparation for 6 minutes of violence. When the moment came, he didn't hesitate. But the deeper truth is darker. Shomo's 7 kills that morning were part of a systematic destruction of Japanese air power that would culminate in the firebombing of Tokyo 2 months later, and the atomic bombs in August. Each downed fighter represented one less plane to defend the home islands, one less pilot to fly a kamikaze mission against the invasion fleet. The arithmetic was brutal and inexorable. Japan was running out of everything: fuel, metal, pilots, time. Shomo's mission proved it. He flew until the end of the war, accumulating 8 total air-to-air victories and 19 more planes destroyed on the ground during strafing runs. But he never again saw combat like January 11, 1945. Lightning doesn't strike the same place twice. After the war, Shomo returned to Pittsburgh. He organized the Pennsylvania Air National Guard's 1st Fighter Unit. When people asked him about his Medal of Honor, he'd deflect. Talk about his crew chief, his wingman. The other pilots in his squadron who didn't get medals but did the same job day after day. He died in 1990. At his funeral, 7 fighter jets flew overhead in missing man formation. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone present. Years later, Japanese aviation historians would identify the mission as part of a January offensive where American fighters destroyed hundreds of Japanese aircraft in the Philippines. But for the 3 pilots who escaped Shomo that morning, it remained something else. Proof that the Americans had become unkillable, that the war was lost, that no amount of courage or sacrifice would change the mathematics of industrial warfare. Shomo understood this better than most. He'd spent his youth preparing bodies for burial, learning that death comes in infinite variations but always ends the same way. War simply industrialized the process. 7 planes, 6 minutes, 1 pilot who never wanted to be there in the first place. The lesson isn't about heroism. It's about the cost of unpreparedness. The Japanese had started the war with the world's best carrier pilots and spent them like ammunition. By 1945, they were sending up teenagers and outdated fighters to die against men like Shomo, a former Undertaker who'd trained for 3 years to execute perfectly in 6 minutes. That's the story nobody wants to tell. Wars are won by logistics, training, and industrial capacity. Individual gallantry matters, but it matters inside a larger framework of resource management and strategic planning. Japan lost that calculus at Midway in 1942 and spent the next 3 years paying compound interest on the debt. William Shomo just collected 1 installment on a January morning over the Philippines. 7 payments in full. Receipts signed in smoke and fire. His last Mustang, which he renamed from Snooks 6 to the Flying Undertaker, still hangs in museums as a reminder. The kid from the funeral home became death itself, precisely because he understood what death cost.